You're welcome to this week's episode of Child Crest. Our focus today on the program is on viral hemorrhagic fever. How true is it that dirty environment predisposes us to viral hemorrhagic diseases? How can you explain people cohabiting with heaps of dirt and gutters in urban settings? Let us go over to the studio as I hand you over to the guest and the anchor for the main segment of the program.
My pleasure to welcome to the studios of Child Crest Professor Sunday AREMU OMILABU is the Director, Central Research Laboratory, College of Medicine, University of Lagos. You're welcome to the program, sir. Viral hemorrhagic fever, what is it? What do we need to know about it?
Hemorrhage there tells us that it has to do with bleeding. And all the viruses that are known to be causing that, they are all RNA viruses. A majority of them are zoonotic, that is, they are kept inside animals. So animals are reservoirs, they are the vectors through which human beings contract the virus, or these viral agents. Essentially, in West Africa, we have Lassa fever, which is commoner here in West Africa. And Nigeria is known to be highly endemic. Yellow fever, which is very common in Africans as well as South Americans. Dengue, which is commoner in Asia, in Africa, and of course some other parts of the world as a result of travel. And then, of course, yellow fever, I've mentioned that one, which is mosquito-borne. It's only mosquito-borne, but we can also get yellow fever from monkeys. Monkeys are actually the ones giving this virus to bush dwellers. So from monkeys, mosquitoes will carry the blood of infected animal, bite human beings, all those that walk in the bush.
Okay.
Then elsewhere, Junine is hemorrhagic fever, but is commoner in Americans.
All right.
Junine virus. And of course, Ebola that came
ravaged the entire
that came 2 years back also belongs to this group of viral viruses. So essentially, they all lead to loss of blood. But not only that one, there are other signs and symptoms which you find commoner to them. In my findings,
I hear that there are some other hemorrhagic fever that are named after countries. Am I correct, or you probably want to clear the air here?
They are not hemorrhagic fevers per se, but many of them are associated with encephalitis.
What's that?
That has to do with some destruction of some parts of the brain.
Okay.
They are not essentially hemorrhagic causing viruses, but they are associated with fever and encephalitis.
Okay. Is there a difference between hemorrhagic fever and viral hemorrhagic fever?
Yes, the viral hemorrhagic fever is telling us that all those hemorrhages due to viral infections.
Okay.
But the problem is that it's only in 30% of cases that you even see hemorrhage.
Okay.
So it can be misleading if you are saying we're looking for hemorrhage per se, because it's only when the disease is advanced that we see loss of blood.
Okay. Now, how do we isolate hemorrhagic fever and probably other fevers that may share same symptoms? How do we isolate which is which? And that's where you come in.
Exactly.
Research and diagnosis.
Exactly. Actually, microbial infections generally present with fever.
Okay.
So we can't distinguish between viral fever and other microbial fevers.
Yes, sir.
Apart from microbes, we also have parasitics, where malaria comes in. They all present with fevers. So, and that's where we need to actually diagnose and isolate the causative organisms. And since we know we are in a zone where we have all these agents, so we need to quickly, once we have fever, we need to quickly isolate which of the fevers so that we can give the right treatment and management. And that's where labs needs to come in fast,
Okay.
and be able to make the diagnosis.
Okay. Some things are epidemic now, some things are raging, some things are, I don't want to use the word trending, because when you say trending, it means positive. But when you have an epidemic of a disease, it's an issue that somebody should, but maybe you can just, some people call it ordinary malaria, and they start running helter-skelter. What's your counsel for people generally?
If we don't have laboratories to make diagnosis, so it will be difficult for anybody to quickly jump on the conclusion. And perhaps that's why before we now discover that we are dealing with viral, it's actually already late, and you see such an individual getting deep into the feverish symptoms, causing complications. If we had earlier made a diagnosis, then we'll know what type of treatment. And there are drugs that no matter how effective, if it is too late enough to make diagnosis, the drug will not make any difference.
Be effective.
So if it's malaria, we know, okay, with malaria, this is the drug for malaria. If it is typhoid fever, we know, okay, at typhoid fever, let's treat with antibiotics. If it is viral fever that we know of, then we have few drugs, like ribavirin for Lassa fever, for instance.
All right. How do you think that Nigerians are really prepared in terms of diagnosing ailments with the quality of labs in this country?
Well, the governments, they are trying to make a pace with the whole world, because we cannot act in isolation. We identify that we really need labs that are standardized, and the governments are working towards that. Governments have actually identified a few labs that have the capacities to make a diagnosis for a number of agents. These identified labs, so they have been actually supported by governments in terms of training and retraining, in terms of reagents to help the laboratory be able to work very well. And of course, facilities are being upgraded.
We're talking about the personnel now. You are a teacher of teachers of lab technicians, so more or less.
Yeah.
Attitude of personnel, qualifications of personnel. How do you think this can, aid correct diagnosis of ailments?
Yeah, I think the interest of the students is paramount. If you want to come and work in the laboratory, you must first of all have that interest at heart, because it's a call to come and serve humanity. And once you are with that correct attitude, and then it will involve your dedication, total dedication to work. Training, you have to be trained and retrained, because equipments keep coming in. So once new set of equipments are out, so we have to subject ourselves to training to know how to handle such equipments. And then, of course, we know we are dealing with dangerous pathogens. All samples coming into the laboratory should be taken as being dangerous,
yes, because
we don't know what's inside locking in. So we need to take care of ourselves, and that's the first thing the principle we first adhere to, and that's lab safety, laboratory safety, biosafety, and then of course the environment. You have to think of people around, biosecurity. So they are the issues that are paramount in the mind of laboratorians. So
right.
all these make them to
be motivated.
get motivated and then put in all within them.
Okay.
Because there are times that you have to stay in the lab till midnight until you get your results. And except when we're having outbreaks, then laboratorians, they have to be in the lab. So they have to work and make sure that the valid results come out of such a diagnosis.
Very well said. And we thank you very much for throwing light on
It's a pleasure, man.
this program. Let's go for a short break, an opportunity for you where you can collaborate with us. We'll be back shortly. Program is Child Crest, and we are talking about viral hemorrhagic fever on our community health series. Some of these fevers are quite common in our community. Of course, that's why we thought we should share thoughts with our big fish in-house today, Professor Sunday AREMU OMILABU, the Director of Central Research Laboratory, LUTH. You are still welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you.
Now, what is the role of the Center for Disease Control?
Their role is very key and is very central. So they call them Nigerian Center for Disease Control.
Yes, sir.
They actually collaborating with most of the labs.
Okay.
I mentioned earlier on that they recognized some labs with the ability to handle some agents. So it's actually the NCDC, Nigerian Center for Disease Control, that is coordinating the effort. So on behalf of the government, the NCDC, they have increased their undertaking of the need for them to collaborate with laboratories in the country by identifying their capabilities, facilities, as well as personnel. So they've done this, and they've come up with identification of some labs which they are actually working with now. Our lab is one of them, and we are networking so that we can share among the labs our facilities and experience. And when there are needs to actually undo some outbreaks, at least we'll know which lab to call. And in terms of facilities and as well as consumables, NCDC, I think, is making sure that they make all these ones available.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. When you talk of viral hemorrhagic fever, we talk about antiviral therapy, intensive support care. How prepared is Nigerians and your facility for this?
Well, there is a diagnosis, which is the key, and the laboratories are well endowed to take care of that. Biosafety, biosecurity, they are two principal words which the whole world is making sure that at least we hold very well. Biosafety, so that the individuals in the lab will be safe while handling samples, and of course the environment where they operate will also be safe. So we ensure that our labs they are doing well in this regard. And then, of course, coming to management, it's when you now diagnose and that the clinicians will now know how to go about it. So I would say we are working hand in hand. And then, of course, the clinicians, they have to use medicaments. And that's where we need to put in more efforts, especially with viral fevers. There are only few antiviral agents for obvious reasons. Most antiviral agents destroy normal cells, apart from viral infected cells. And that's the reasons why they don't just bombard an individual with antivirus.
Okay.
Efforts are ongoing to generate more antivirals that will be very safe. And the word safety is very key.
Yes.
And once they get safe antiviral medicaments, I'm sure many more of them will come up. Okay. But as we are now, researchers are generating antibodies. Antibodies are safer when compared to antiviral drugs. So antibody will only look for the virus and block it. So they are less safer on cells than antiviral drugs. And research effort is ongoing in this area. And Nigeria too should also collaborate with labs where such efforts are ongoing.
All right. Finally, you talked about safety. Safety, I mean, that kept occurring or recurring in your presentation.
Yes.
These viral diseases, hemorrhagic viral diseases, quite infectious. And there's a lot of, even health workers have been known to compromise their health status, particularly families. When you have somebody who is in isolation and has to be cared for, vis-a-vis not transmitting this disease to other people who are caring for that patient. What's your counsel?
Yes, so as not to scare our potential laboratorians, we have operations, the procedures guiding our operations. Safety is very key, so that it is only able body that will be able to work on samples from patients. We need to work with some specified materials, which we call the protective equipment. We call it personal protective equipment that we use to safeguard ourselves, that we protect ourselves with. Minimally, we need gloves to put in our hands. We have various grades of gloves, but there is specified one for viral studies. And then, of course, we have face mask. There is specified one for those handling viruses. And then, of course, while working, so we have to be very careful that we don't allow virus to splash. And then, of course, we don't work on viruses on the open bench. So there must be a containment, at least a glove box or a BSL-2, where you can handle your sample with much confidence in yourself, and that there won't be any exposure to the virus or to any of the agents in the sample. So the containment is containing it. So we have those minimal ones in the lab that we work with, and that's used to assure us that whatever samples comes in, once we work under the hood, that's another term for it, will be very safe. But in addition to making sure that we work with the standard operative procedure on how to handle samples. Then with the issue of families, we know that with viral infections, there is possibility of transmission. And that's why we always advise that there should be isolation. We isolate those that are infected from those that are not infected, so that they don't transmit the infection to the uninfected ones. So, and that's very, very key. It's part of management of the disease, so that at least when we don't have too many down with the viral agents, then we know our hands will not be too choked in terms of maintaining, managing the cases, as well as the laboratory work. And that one has really worked well by isolation. Once we isolate yourself, and you know that, okay, you don't, when you are going there, you put all the gadgets that will protect you, so there won't be any chance of transmission.
Oh, interesting. Well done, and congratulations.
It's a pleasure.
Well, I remember some times ago that you said people are running away from all these viruses, you are chasing it.
Yes.
What's your take? Because we are going to be looking at one or two of these diseases as time permits. You know, general counsel for people regarding the hemorrhagic fevers, and why is it so rampant now? I mean, we never used to hear of all this Ebola, Lassa, you know, dengue.
Yes.
Long ago. I mean,
Yes.
it was news to us. But now, you seem really overwhelmed with all this research and diagnosis.
Thank you very much. The agents are still there in the vectors. It's our attitude that has changed from the past. The attitude of keeping healthy environment is lacking now. These vectors that we are talking about, the reservoirs, we know where they like to stay, where there are junks, taking rodents which harbor a number of diseases. You only find them where there are junks, where they can hide themselves. If they are in the open, they know that they will be exposed to enemies. So they will never stay in such an environment. So that's why we are saying that we need to look into our environments. We need to look into how we keep our things. Living a hygienic life involves making sure that our environments are very clean, no bushes surroundings. Our kitchens will be very neat, because rodents will look for food remnants. Anywhere they see food remnants, they will come there and be staying there. And once we make sure that we don't allow all this, the rodents will they won't move closer to us. They will move far away. And that's why during the dry season, when there are bush burnings, the rodents are exposed. They don't like exposures. So they will want to move into where they can get some hidings. Mosquitoes that are also transmitting, you see them that they hide in the bushes around the houses, or where you have gutters with stagnant water. That's why you see them breathing heavily. So once we move all this from our surroundings, then we maintain a healthy living, hygienic living. Those agents, they run away from us. Looking at the issue of Ebola, you know, our lifestyle changed a bit with jingles that we need to maintain cleanliness. Clean our environment, clean our hands. If you touch anything, that clean your hands. If you want to do anything, clean your hands. If you want to eat, clean your hands. During this period, there was a downtrend in the number of diseases, apart from even Ebola. Other infectious diseases were they were down, and we enjoyed this for a few months after Ebola. And then once Ebola was off the way, then we had to come back to the usual style of just keeping environments filthy. Okay. So these are the only thing. Health education about maintaining a healthy lifestyle, a healthy environment. And those are the ones that we keep all those reservoirs away from us.
Thank you very much, sir, for sharing thoughts with us
it's a
on viral hemorrhagic fever.
You're always welcome.
I must say congratulations and well done.
Thank you.
At least just a few stay around, we were able to grab you, so to say, to come to the studio. I pray that you continue to, add value wherever you go to do all this diagnosis and research work.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
It's a pleasure.
And for training the younger ones too.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, let's go over to other segments of the program. When we come back, we shall say bye-bye.
When we talk about safety for the kids, we talk about the bleeding, then we talk about circulation. Your home must have good ventilation, number one. The air conditioner that we all now have at our home may be a source of fire. It may also be a source of havoc for the children. These air conditioners store organisms, especially if they're not looked after, taken care of over a period of 2 years. Maximum, they should be cleaned. The vent of the air conditioner should be changed. Otherwise, the child is prone to have airborne diseases. And children that are also prone to have asthma will have this problem if they stay in an environment that is fully air conditioned all the time.
Yeah, welcome back. The program is Child Crest. Don't forget that you can collaborate with us on this program so that the program can endure. Make it a date with us same time next week when we shall bring you another edition of Child Crest. It is all about the child. Bye for now.
you.